This is part 2 of the last of my videos on the subject of the war on Gaza. My guides instructed me that it was time to go back to regular order, flip the page. That's a good sign. Even though there are some dark days ahead, darker days than now, the sun will soon emerge from behind those dark clouds. The eclipse will soon disappear. Better days are coming sooner than we think. I was determined to record this part 2 video last night, but my guides, they know best. They told me to go to bed, and so I did. And when I woke up this morning, I realized the reasons. 2 more of my messages, visions, what I've recorded in my other videos proved to be accurate. One, in the video I did on the stage is set, Netanyahu's closing argument and final curtain call, where I said that in the final days, the West Bank would be locked down. Residents would not be able to leave their homes, their towns, and their villages. Well, Israel, or should I say the IDF, has indeed announced such a lockdown. And the second one, it is being widely reported now, and I've been busy immersed in my work, didn't realize for about 2 days now it's been reported that Iran has arrested at least a dozen members of the IRGC, I believe it is, and also that the commander of the QUDS force is under arrest for spying the camp, as you will discover the days on which I had those visions. Before I begin, as well, we must not forget the children in Israel. There are orphans left from October 7th. There are many children who've been traumatized with all the rockets, and there are children who've been displaced, both from the south and from the north. 2 wrongs do not make a right. Every child on this earth is our child. All of us, the collective of humanity. And children should never be blamed for the actions of adults and their forever wars. I've done my due diligence and I found one link that appears to me to be reputable. I've added it along with a list of United Nations organizations and other NGOs, reputable ones. I've added those links below. If you can help just a little, please do. Remember, every child on this earth belongs to all of us. It is our duty to take care of them. Now, today, or should I say this weekend, is Thanksgiving weekend in Canada. And as I was about to record, I went upstairs to baste my turkey. And all of a sudden I felt a cool breeze. And I heard the voice saying, hurry, the pace is a quickening. The pace is a quickening. Hurry, hurry, I'm giving you a warning. I'm giving you a warning. I'm giving you a warning. I'm not a singer, but that's what I got. I do not know for whom. Perhaps that warning is for all of us. My body was hot and it was cold. I found myself back in my office, rocking back and forth. And I, who am not given to tears, many think that I do not know how to cry, found myself weeping. My God, my God. To you I give myself. And I don't mean that in the Christian way. I mean that in the way that we, each of us on this earth and in what is happening now, is merely a player on a stage. And there is very little we can do. There's very little wiggle room for any of us, even though we think we have a handle on it all and we control the situation. None of us do. The only wiggle room will be for those who are doing incorrect deeds to claim back their consciences and do the right thing. It's never too late. Do the right thing. And I'm speaking about those who are involved in doing the wrong things in the war against children and other innocents in the Middle East. Now, let us begin with listing and pointing out the things from my previous videos and other relevant visions and messages that have come to pass. I thought it would be a short one, but I didn't realize how many of these messages have come to pass. These messages, the first set I'm going to go over, were given in both waking and sleeping states. Once again, all these messages have been memorialized. I awakened at 4 a.m. on the morning of October 31st, 2023, having just returned from my spiritual travel to the Middle East, where I witnessed certain events. These details will be made available at a later date. My guides have said most of these details are not for publication at this time. But I will give you two details from this travel. One was the pickup truck seen in one of the videos on the morning of October 7th, driving hostages into Gaza. It was the exact truck that I had seen and described when I memorialized the vision, and consequently, as I said, recorded and memorialized 1 week prior. A second detail was the appearance of the peacock throne. There are many details in that vision that I had not known about the peacock throne. For example, that The queen, if you want to call it that, was also named Empress. And as I went on Google to check the exact, there was a portrait with the dress, the color, everything, which was exactly what I saw in the vision. This vision was the beginning and the end of what appears to be a conflict, as I went over in the first video of this 2-video series etched in the records. When Joe Biden agreed to debate his rival on CNN, I heard the message, disaster. Indeed, it was a disaster. CNN and its hosts guaranteed that it was. While questions swirled around Mr. Biden, whether or not he would withdraw from the race or not, and many predicted that he would not, I was given a clear message on Friday, July 19th, 2024, that Joe Biden will pull out of the race. On Saturday night, July 20th, I queried once more and was told, quote, yes, this weekend before Netanyahu shows up, end of quote. Immediately following this message, I discussed with someone the reasons why and remarked that indeed my essay on Mr. Biden, or the video, what will your answer when the Archangel Michael sounds his trumpet? What will your answer be? Joe Biden, what will your answer be? Proved to be accurate. Mr. Netanyahu had indeed stomped on Mr. Biden's fingers that were hanging onto the ledge on the 99th floor and saving him from gravity. Mr. Netanyahu had indeed let go of the rope on which he had Mr. Biden dangling. CNN helped to ensure that, but the road was paved with unintended consequences. Weeks before the pager and walkie-talkie terrorist attack by Israel in Lebanon that killed and injured not only Hezbollah members, but also many civilians, including children and medics, in hospitals, we wonder why Israel always kills medics. I memorialized spy in the camp, spy in the camp, Hezbollah, watch out, Iran, beware, billionaires and millionaires, end of quote. Later messages in the weeks to follow would elaborate on this message. And in the wee hours of the morning of September 17th, 2024, before the pager event, I traveled once more in sleeping state and saw attacks that kept coming one after the other, with each one seeming to be the last, but each time was not. I also saw Mr. Netanyahu dressed in soiled light brown khaki pants and a blue polo shirt, giving a speech, at the end of which he went into a back room with someone I will not now disclose. I have only given a summary of the vision. The pants, the stain and the soil and colors and the individual with whom he retired to a back room are significant. I leave it at that. On September 18th, 2024, I was given the message. Part of it is, quote, trap for Israel as they enter Lebanon, end of quote. Indeed, at least 8 of their soldiers were killed and perhaps dozens more wounded on or about October 2nd, 2024. Skeptics might say that soldiers are killed for it is war, so there's nothing in that. The nature and the number of injured and dead and the withdrawal for that particular foray was not an everyday occurrence. On September 20th, 2024, at 4:38 a.m., I was given the message for entertainment purposes only. Remember now, these videos are for entertainment purposes only. Quote, Netanyahu will have a sudden stop. Something is going to come out of left center. What will halt him? End of quote. It didn't say that will halt him. It said what will halt him. On September 21st, 2024, at 3:15 a.m., as I sat in my office working, I work late into the hours, or the wee hours of the morning, I was given the message, quote, if Israel doesn't get the all-out war response from Hezbollah that they're awaiting, their final egg will be the assassination of Nasrallah between now and the October surprise to install, and I don't mention that name, but they said it, and that is the Republican nominee in the United States. End of quote. There is cash being given to spies in Lebanon, quote begins again, quote, there is cash being given to spies in Lebanon, being funded by Israeli millionaires and billionaires, said, and I will just name a few, Blinken, McGurk, Kirby, Sullivan, Miller, and I leave the other name are very complicit. And I won't go on with that particular paragraph of quote. I will add this other quote within that long thread, quote, when Kirby lies, he scratches his hand and twists his mouth. Blinken, according to the records, will be held to account in this lifetime. Karma, the law of cause and effect, this is what they mean. Each of us has to answer to that. Sometimes we are made to face the law of cause and effect in this lifetime. Some of us, it seems as if we escape, but we have to face it in another lifetime. According to my belief, he will face some of it in this lifetime. And they added, quote, he never offered condolences for the beheaded Palestinian children, but was quick to offer condolences to Jews who do not consider themselves Israeli, whose children were probably killed by a rocket fired by IDF using fallen rockets from Iran's retaliation, end of quote. And I will add here, yes, he was right to offer condolences to the Jews' children who were killed. Children have nothing to do with war, and they should never be hurt. Saturday, September 28th, 2024, quote, Netanyahu will pull out all the stops, but it won't help him. Unintended consequences. The realignment America and Israel expect will not be the one they will get. End of quote. Indeed, Mr. Nasrallah was assassinated 1 week later, immediately after Mr. Netanyahu left the stage following his megalomaniac propaganda befitting the despot of a rogue nation. Here we see the visions of September 17th, the morning of the walkie-talkie, or pager incidents rather, and the 21st, message of the 21st converging. On October 9th, 2024, I memorialized a long series of messages. I will list only a part of them here as instructed by my guides. Quote, Iran, saboteurs on the ground, eliminating scientists, sabotage of facilities, target in the Iranian parliament to eliminate members of the government. Khamenei, IRGC, oil refineries, nuclear facilities on the list with hospitals and airfields and intelligence centers, missile museum as well. Symbolic. Malware planted in computers will be activated as the lights go out and ships also targeted. This is the plan. Men will swoop in to take control, install the new Shah. The ending of the cycle from the vision of September 31st, 2023. Aim is to break the Great Persia apart into tiny bits, so no truly powerful Muslim country will stand unintended consequences. American intelligence and weapons and agents guiding this mission. All spies on the ground will be activated. They are sure of their plan. Yes, there is a plan. A plot between some in the IRGC and wider Iran, Israel, the Sunnis in the South, America, and its neocons, both Democratic and Republican, from different administrations, and the son of the Shah and his group. We do not need 4 eyes for this. The Bay of Pigs and the Iranian expedition. The regime change might backfire. Documents seized during raid being utilized. Lebanon was a dry run. The last quote from what was a very long and detailed thread was the question: is part of the IRGC waiting to stage a coup? End of quote. Just as I am about to record this video, as I said in the beginning, it is being widely reported that a group of IRGC members, including its commander, are being investigated, suspected of espionage, spies for Israel. I will also add here that in addition to this, the hope that a peace deal would be reached between Lebanon and Israel. The main reason Iran took so long to retaliate was because it was trying to ferret out the spies in the camp. Let me put where the quotes go. Quote, ferret out the spies in the camp. End of quote. This was the answer given, memorialized in automatic writing. As I know and wrote in the essays and consequently published as videos on this channel, everything will come to light. And remember, these essays which became videos were written between January and March of 2024. It will not take years for things to come to light. Everything will be revealed soon, sooner than we think. There shall be revelations that will make our heads spin. We have only seen and heard the tip of the iceberg. No one will be able to prevent those revelations, for what is written is written. Everything is happening at a fast pace. The deaths, the revelations, everything. That is what the pace is, a quickening. It is like if you watch those horror movies when Dracula returns to his castle in his coffin and the horse is galloping, galloping, galloping. The pace is a quickening because the master has returned. The master has returned. That is what it feels like. Hopefully, I should say rather, this particular event, the things that we are seeing now, is very sad. A very sad and tragic play, and each of us merely players. Hopefully, those who are causing harm will realize it and reclaim the consciences from which they fled. This is the only change that can be made in this play. Now, we will look at accuracies from the videos. I did say that Mr. Netanyahu could smell blood in the water, and that was the blood of Mr. Biden. Mr. Netanyahu did indeed stomp on Mr. Biden's fingers and let go of the rope on which he had him dangling, because Mr. Netanyahu did not need Mr. Biden to get what he wanted. Others in the Biden administration, in the cult of Bibi, were more than willing to give him what he wanted. Mr. Biden's mission in this lifetime was to save the lives of one of the indigenous people groups of the Levant, and he did not. See my book for further discussion of this from the spiritual perspective. I said that Mr. Netanyahu would light as many fires as possible, creating forever wars, including attack Iran to provoke war to boost his sagging political fortune, and save himself from prison if convicted, and help to put Mr. Biden's rival in office. Election interference, that sounds like to me, and he said it loudly. Charge for other countries, but not for Israel. He has succeeded, it would appear, because the propaganda has begun with Miss Harris, the Democratic nominee, telegraphing just that when she said that Iran was America's greatest enemy. It is no longer China or Russia. She does not believe that, but is no doubt helping to pave the way. The beginning salvo, we should say, to provide an excuse as to why America would need to attack Iran and drag Americans into a war to sacrifice needlessly American lives, costing trillions of dollars. This would be a repeat of the Iraq scenario. With his speech to Congress, Mr. Netanyahu sounded the loud drums to a war in which Israel lost nothing. Perez and Ehud Barak also helped. Once again, perhaps more than 1 million Iraqis died and millions more injured and maimed. Thousands of American and Allied soldiers died. Tens of thousands injured. How many orphans? How many suffered PTSD? What did Israel lose in all of this? The trillions of dollars squandered could have been invested in America's education system to educate an ever-growing ignorant and illiterate American population lacking in the critical thinking skills necessary to prevent unscrupulous politicians and corporations from convincing them to vote against their interests and falling prey to conspiracy theories pushed by unscrupulous or themselves ignorant politicians, malign foreign actors, and propaganda channels masquerading as news media corporations, whether on the left or the right. While there will always be flat earthers, climate deniers, there would be less of them. People would learn to use their common sense, surely a misnomer, for it is not very common. During the worst of the COVID pandemic, COVID is still with us, by the way, there would have been less people telling doctors that they, the doctors, needed to go back to school because they, the people, know all about COVID and that it does not exist, and they refuse to wear masks. Although they wear dresses, they do not wear underwear because God says everything must breathe. It causes one to wonder why such an individual wore any clothing at all. But of course, the contradiction, absence of logic in that argument would not be comprehensible to one given to believing conspiracy theories. There will be less people believing Republicans and their nominees who are spreading rumors currently that meteorologists are causing the hurricanes, resulting in threats against meteorologists, emergency workers, sending out SOS to destroy hurricane stations and destroy the radars. People would not have advocated, unfortunately, not too many put it into practice, the imbibing of bleach, a corrosive and toxic substance to cure COVID. These ridiculous beliefs are too prevalent in America. Those funds lost in Iraq could have been used to help to improve the health care of an increasingly sick population descending into poverty, still believing in the fast disappearing, ever more elusive American dream. Those funds could have been used to fix infrastructure falling behind so many other countries. Knowledge is power. Indeed it is. That is why throughout history, there has always been a consistent effort by religion, politicians, unwise parents, and the list goes on, to detract and prevent people from obtaining knowledge. This is why the truth tellers, real ethical journalists, the ones who report the facts, are usually targeted by tyrants and demagogues. Israel has killed at least 100 of these brave truth tellers in less than 1 year and detained dozens. The reasons are clear. It has only allowed a few journalists, like those from CNN, to embed with the IDF to help billow the smoke of its propaganda. Those funds could help to enrich a population now convinced by unscrupulous politicians, corporate entities, and media, and prevent it from burning and banning books, shutting down knowledge, a population and a society teetering on the brink of becoming a feudal state, no different from Afghanistan and the Taliban. Welcome to the Talibanization of America. This is how empires fall. While it dey abroad a fast in a everybody business, feet their yard a spoil. While it's busy meddling in other people's business, its business at home is going to rot. Just a side note, more than 10,000 titles have been banned in America, couched in the back to the good old days, dog whistle code words of family values that mask racism, anti-Semitism, LGBTQ plus phobias, and misogyny. More often than not, those spearheading these drives, these book burning and book banning drives, have not read or do not know anything or have any understanding, for that matter, about the books they burn or ban. To bring awareness to the banning of books and the onslaught on literary freedom in America, Canadian author Margaret Atwood partnered up with her publisher, Penguin Random House, to create a fireproof version of her book, The Handmaid's Tale, that was sold for $130,000, with the proceeds donated to Penn. Now, I have listed that website as well below. Back to Miss Harris' statement. No, Miss Harris, Iran is not America's greatest enemy, and you know that. History teaches us that our greatest enemy is self. America's greatest enemy is not Iran, Russia, or China for that matter. It is America itself. Look in the mirror of self-reflection. It is not to say that America should not be mindful of its enemies, and there are many, due in part because of its military and economic might and the principles it espouses, but unfortunately fail to uphold, and in part due to its meddling and support of dictators who have and do repress their populations. Ms. Harris's statement signals a repeat of the build-up, the steady drumbeat to war with the invasion of Iraq in 2003. To get reluctant allies on board with their malign and nefarious intentions and goals, as there are now fewer, who after the disaster in Gaza, to which they willingly signed up and became complicit in an unfolding genocide for the ages, and one in which they have no power to prevent, as their names will also be etched in the dungeons of infamy along with Netanyahu and the Israeli government, Joe Biden and his inglorious, amoral and immoral State Department, Pentagon, and National Security Council. No doubt they're fabricating and altering, perhaps documents seized in one very important raid in Syria, and extraction and two others, along with what spies might have provided. Perhaps they might have been fed false evidence as Iran ferreted out the spies in its camp along with some of those in Hezbollah's camp. The American mainstream media, all forms, will no doubt start billowing the smoke, adding to the drumbeat to war, the crusade not to Jerusalem, but to Tehran. All the actors are the same. The Israeli provocateur and temptress, Netanyahu. The American neocons, both Democratic and Republicans. Many in the EU. Canada, under Jean Chrétien, did not follow into Iraq. The United Kingdom, of course, and others. Mad men, that includes women, doing the same thing and expect different results. Perhaps the pace is a quickening. Indeed, and cooler, sane, peace-loving heads will prevail. Do not trouble Zion, for Zion has a key to open sinners' heart. Do not trouble Zion. And no, Zion is not Iran. Do not trouble Zion. Do not trouble Zion. For Zion has a key to open sinners' heart. Do not trouble Zion. But beware, a cat does not mouse in the manner that it walks. In Jamaica they say, same way puss walk, and a same way in mouse. The road is paved with unintended consequences. I did say that one of the reasons Mr. Biden and his amoral and immoral State Department, Pentagon included, built that ill-fated port was to help Israel undermine UNRWA. This was proven correct and accurate. Recent revelations show that the World Central Kitchen was indeed intended to replace UNRWA, but unintended consequences intervened. The IDF killed 7 World Central Kitchen foreign staff, and if I'm wrong on the numbers, please forgive me, so that the plan went down the tube. The IDF also used the port to help it stage its first of many massacres in the Al-Mawasi refugee tent city. The IDF commits many daily massacres in Gaza. There have been more than 365 days of daily massacres. Wrap your head around that. In that massacre, many civilians, including many children and babies, were incinerated. Only bits and parts recovered. The wailing, the screeches, as people, our brothers to all of us in this brotherhood of man, were burnt alive in their shabby tent city, in their shabby tents that they called home. They have nothing. They have been robbed of the little that they had. Real babies were decapitated, and not the made-up ones of the propaganda spread by the Israeli government and attested to by America's pretend fireman and true arsonist, the man with the forked tongue. Time and again, as I so accurately said in the video, the big boys and the big girls and the golden opportunity that Mr. Netanyahu is an unreliable, unscrupulous, duplicitous partner not to be trusted. But thief and thief, God laughs. God laughs when he sees 2 thieves in cahoots. Once again, he is duplicitous and does not know the meaning of honor. He is, after all, a racist, corrupt narcissist and supremacist, only thinking about his own interests. He does not even care about the hostages. America and Israel are still working to undermine UNRWA. There's more to discover about that port, its planners and profiteers. That is the job of a good investigative journalist. I will add here that in future questioning, the more than $300 million wasted on that port, the amoral and immoral Biden State Department and Pentagon will say that they took the money that was destined for UNRWA to build it. So, it would have been spent anyways. The road is paved with unintended consequences. I also suggested that Mr. Biden would announce some type of fake embargo. He did. They held back one shipment of 2,000-pound bombs for a short while, after, of course, having shipped more than enough in their little make plenty shipments, a workaround congressional oversight used by the former administration. This, of course, to quell dissent until Mr. Blinken lied before Congress. Nonetheless, the man with the forked tongue, the hold-up and the holdout, the pretend fireman with the empty water hose that has never been connected to a hydrant in one hand and a replenished gas can in the other hand, did indeed hold up the reports. That would have banned many of those shipments, and once again, he did lie before Congress. But he has been outed. I saw through him from the beginning of this war on Gaza that he was, as I just described, a man who learned the wrong lessons from history but believed erroneously that what he was doing was honoring some memory. He was ready to lie, act as the propagandist in chief for the extremist right-wing supremacist government in Israel, and did not much care about the strategic interests of America. How could he, with what is going on in Gaza? He said that this was personal. He gave away the jig, as I memorialized in the poems written December 2023, given by my guides. In the poems, The Man with the Forked Tongue and All Smoke in the Mirror, he professed hope with words that belie thoughts, that his actions bringing destruction and despair revealed. Every trip he made was an inflection point in this war, when Israel was about to cross a red line and show itself bereft of humanity, a projection that it had put on the Palestinian people that did in fact describe them and their actions. That is, by them, I mean the IDF and that government. I might add here, no matter the barbarism in which we engage, we are all brothers in this brotherhood of man. Eventually, each one of us will bring equilibrium to our soul, for our Creator, fortunately, is unlike us. Our Creator is not a vengeful, unforgiving, partial Creator. The Creator has no chosen few. He loves all of us. He created every one of us equally as spirit, giving us a free will and a conscience to guide that free will. It is easy to verify what I have just said by checking the dates of Mr. Blinken's trips, or even the announcement of his trips and events occurring on the ground in Gaza at that time or around that time. The last one, I believe, coincided with the terrorist action of the pager explosions. I did not flinch, shy away, or be politically correct in attaching Nazi labels to Israel, its actors and actions. I'm not a politician. I don't have to lie and pretend. I know what the truth of reincarnation and its facts are. I know the journey of the soul. I know that the masks of religion, race, color, ethnicity, social and economic status, political persuasion are all irrelevant. I know that supremacists are all the same, no different one from the other, but use different masks, like the ones I've just listed, to achieve the same goal of power and control. I know that war has no descendants, and so a von Trotta, von Sass, King Herod and Hitler are no different from a Netanyahu or any other supremacist, be they white, black, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, male or female. The words and the actions in rhyme and verbatim is exactly what the Nazis did. We have seen it being played out in broad daylight 24/7 for more than 365 days and counting. We read and we hear about what happened in the concentration camps of the Nazis, and we have seen films after the fact. But in Gaza and elsewhere, now in Lebanon, we see and understand even more. I might add here, I also foresaw the poisoning of water wells, and this has been proven accurate months later in the West Bank, carried out by settlers. I did say that the marauding gangs of settlers, the paramilitary funded by the State of Israel and in cooperation with the Israeli security forces, not unlike the Rapid Support Forces RSF in Sudan, the oprichniki of the first Tsar of Russia, Ivan IV, or Ivan the Terrible, as we know him, or the SS, or brown shirts, Sturmabteilung, and the different iterations of the Nazis will eventually turn inwards on their fellow Israeli citizens. Ivan the Terrible had to dissolve the oprichniki because they were becoming unmanageable. The settlers operate above and outside the laws of the country, and Israel as a country does operates above all international and humanitarian laws. Let me rephrase that. The settlers operate above and outside the laws of the country, as Israel as a country does above all international and humanitarian laws. We got a glimpse of this and things to come when settlers, including members of the Knesset, stormed the detention center, the Free Soldiers, who were being detained for the brutal rape of a Palestinian hostage, not prisoner, hostage, with a hot metal rod, inflicting such injury so severe that medics had no choice but to report them. Welcome to a society fully in the throes of barbarism and savagery, unbecoming of a civilized, humane state. And Mr. Netanyahu can repeat 1,000,000 times that Israel is a guardian of Judeo-Christian civilization. Just because he says so doesn't make it so. Actions speak louder than words. When there are no Palestinians to abuse, who will these settlers turn on next? Well, the black Jews from Ethiopia might be next, along with the Druze and, well, Arab Israelis, of course. And after them, perhaps some of those who helped to finance them. Where will it end? Perhaps in civil war, as it has in Sudan. The horse is out of the stable. The state of Israel and any of its sane leaders need to act with haste before that horse is beyond reach. It would be unfortunate indeed. America and its January 6 insurrection is a reflection of Israeli society's descent into the abyss. I mentioned the importance of artificial intelligence, AI, in this war in Gaza that has helped in the slaughter of so many people in Gaza. This is memorialized in the poem Miss Thomas Puss. Indeed, Gaza is the laboratory, and Gazans the lab rats and guinea pigs for this technology of destruction. I spoke of the dogs and their importance and the role they will probably play in the final onslaught. Indeed, we have heard of numerous accounts of dogs being set on people, old and young, to bite them and to eat remains of the dead. They are even used, as previously mentioned, in the rape of at least one Palestinian hostage in an Israeli detention center. This is animal cruelty. Where is the outcry from PETA and animal rights groups? Even sheep crossing the street are picked off by Israeli snipers. And indeed, Israeli soldiers do use Palestinians, including children, as human shields. In one incident, we see Israeli soldiers strap an injured Palestinian to the front of his tank to use him as a human shield. They often use even children as human shields in both Gaza and the West Bank, for example, testing for booby traps. What they did during the return to al-Shifa hotel of bulldozing the dead and the living in their Israeli specialty stew, slaughter more displaced civilians, including the injured, and then use the ever-present bulldozer to bury the dead and then blow up parts of the hospital to cover their crimes. Indeed, this was repeated during the second visit to each hospital, as I wrote, between January and March. This is no different from the Japanese, who were very good at destroying the evidence at Unit 731. The Nazis were too proficient and administrative. They made too many copies of documents. And indeed, too many in the Biden administration, National Security Council, and State Department are filled with what can only be described as a deep hatred of the different people groups in the Middle East, including Palestinians and other people groups, which include Arabs, of the Levant and throughout the entire Middle East, be they Muslims or Christians, whose lives they feel are not equal to those of the Israelis or white Europeans. We have only to look at the treatment of those Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian Americans who were slaughtered by the State of Israel. The Justice Department of America have not charged any IDF culprits for their deaths, including the death of Shireen Abu Akleh, or even al-Shifa. Let me say that properly. al-Shifa Yegi, the Turkish American who was killed by the IDF. Their families have not even been worthy enough in their grief to merit a telephone call, neither from the Vice President nor the President Consoler-in-Chief. If I am mistaken, please feel free to correct me. That says it all. Palestinians are viewed by many in the administration, as I said before, as a pest to be exterminated. No wonder they have given Israel the green light as part of their devil's bargain. And it will be proven to eliminate the Palestinian refugee populations wherever they are found throughout the Middle East, and to undermine UNRWA in order to eliminate the Palestinian people from the world's collective memory and history. There will be no Palestinians with rights of return. Palestinians remind Israel, America and the UK, and to a lesser extent the rest of the Western world, of its shame. The records will eventually prove the devil's bargain. Hidden consciences will soon find some of their owners. Guaranteed. I did suggest that there were more horrors to be discovered at al-Shifa. Indeed, the headless remains of victims of the Israeli slaughter machine were dug up. The horrifying details are coming out day by day, including the torture and barbarism in the detention centers. Fortunately, there are still people in Israel who respect their duty to their conscience. Unfortunately, immersed in their grief and somnolence and revenge, there are too few of these individuals. Indeed, Mr. Netanyahu is lighting fires on every front. Let us hope that the arsonist and his companion, America, do not become engulfed in the fires that they are lighting and the flames that they fan. When the wind blows, we cannot control fires that we light. That is why people who use controlled burning to enrich the soil and cultivate bountiful crops, and to prevent wildfires that now burn out of control annually, have specific seasons when they do so. We must be conscious not to light fires in a dry season. The road in this conflict is paved with unintended consequences. Mr. Netanyahu and America, please be careful. When we play with fire, we get burnt, even if we are the most powerful country in the world. Learn the good lessons from history. In the video, the stage is set for the grand finale. Netanyahu's closing argument and final curtain call. I said there would be a symphony, with the main menu being Rafah. Other accompanying venues would include the West Bank, Lebanon, and elsewhere. I wrote this between January and March. The timing was off, but much softening up has been going on in Yemen, for example, and Syria, and with the United States now fully on board, its intelligence now fully activated and shared with extremists. There are more raids in Syria and Lebanon as they, the provocateur and temptress, Netanyahu, and her knight in shining armor, America, prepare for the precision and lethal strike on the object of their collective desire, Iran. For many months, it appeared that the venue of Rafah was not to be, but it is now back in full swing. The symphony has indeed begun in earnest. While the world is distracted by the different fires being lit by the arsonists, Netanyahu and his gang are having a redo. Time is limited. They are once more moving the herd from the north. They aim to empty it this time round and so to wipe out all traces of the United Nations and any form of shelter that Gazans, determined not to move, would use as shelter. They have bombed all the schools and whatever buildings or semblance of buildings might be left. After 1 year of non-stop bombings, what else is left to bomb? We must wonder. They are not pretending anymore. They are simultaneously moving the herd from all directions in Gaza to their point of mass killing. And for those who survive, expulsion. Rafah is back on. As I said in the essay, the Rafah crossing would be bombed and destroyed, and indeed it was bombed by Israel. It no longer exists for all intents and purposes. Israel controls that area. This will indeed facilitate expulsion for the survivors into Egypt. Who is going to stop them? The dogs will come out in force, the bulldozers, the tanks, and the ships to ensure that survivors cross over. American supplied jets with their multi-ton bombs and AI technology will ensure that as many as possible die. Well, right now, fleeing Gazans are being tracked and shot by drones. My God. My God. It will be, it appears, like the citizens and boyars of Novgorod, who were pushed into the icy waters by Ivan the Terrible's Oprichniki and were killed when they attempted to get out. It will be as Julius Caesar and his army as they massacred, a massacre that was declared a genocide of 150,000 to 200,000 Usipetes and Tencteres, according to archaeological evidence. Caesar reported that he deliberately drove many, including women and children, into the waters, where obviously they drowned. The West Bank has been under intense, accelerated fire. Settler attacks in coordination with the IDF and other Israeli security forces, burnings and pillaging, poisoning of the water, destruction of all infrastructure, and now during this time of harvest, theft of their crops and destruction of the olive trees, many hundreds of years old. And once again, wherever they find any memory of Shireen Abu Akleh, they destroy it. Whenever the evidence for their crimes and atrocities is irrefutable and cannot be spun even with the collaboration of their collaborators in America, they try to wipe away all traces of that memory. Other than the blatant desire to usurp and rob Palestinians of their lands, it is committing genocide. Genocide when and if it can be completed erases all traces of the existence of a people from history. With the passage of time, that existence is even put into question, eventually becoming an existence that never was, one of myth and legend, the veracity of which will never be proven. The existence of the Palestinian reminds not only Israel, but also the Western world of its shame. Many Middle Eastern countries also bear some of this shame. If this genocide succeeds, the world in its entirety will bear that shame, being left with a stench that no deodorizer will ever be able to neutralize, and a wound so deep and so wide no cauterization will ever heal. I also said that during this closing argument, people in the West Bank will not be allowed to leave their homes or their towns and villages. On this day, as I record this video, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is exactly what has been announced and what is happening. The settlers will then proceed, no doubt, without any opposition, to harvest the olives and destroy the trees. Perhaps they might even light houses with people locked inside, and should they try to escape, they will be met with bullets from the soldiers of the rogue army. My God, my God. Soon. Those in the West Bank might also be expelled, only to be exterminated, when Israel with America might very well produce a false flag operation that Palestinians in Jordan performed some sort of attack. This will give reason to bomb as many Palestinians in Jordan as possible. I do believe there are more Palestinians in Jordan than there are Jordanians. This road is paved with many unintended consequences, unless the universe has other plans. Rafa's closing argument could very well coincide with the lethal precision strike planned for Iran, where all eyes will be. Let us hope for the best and pray that I am wrong. I am believing, actually, as I speak now, that I might very well be wrong on this. And that's a good thing. Lastly, I pose the question in the golden opportunity, the big girls and the big boys. Who will bring Mr. Netanyahu to heel? None of America's feckless mob of sheep can. Neither can the ICC, ICJ, or the Security Council. All, as I said, are feckless, rendered impotent by America and Israel. Just imagine. A world with almost 200 countries, and 2 countries have been given so much power that they rule. Almost 198 of them. In Jamaica they say, donkey say, the world no level, and a true. Donkey says that the world is not level, and that's true. I still maintain that Mr. Netanyahu is in his 9th life. I will not change that. This road is paved with unintended consequences. Remember what I also said, that this very sad and tragic play, in it, each of us is merely a player. We don't have much say in it. We don't have much room to change, because what is written for many reasons. Who will bring Mr. Netanyahu to heel? I ask again. Remember the messages of September 28th, 2024? That said, quote, Netanyahu will pull out all the stops, but it won't help him. Unintended consequences. The realignment America and Israel expect will not be the one they will get. End of quote. And the message on September 20th, 2024. Netanyahu will have a sudden stop. Something is going to come out of left center what will halt him. End of quote. There have been many unintended consequences of this conflict, but before I continue, remember, this video is for entertainment purposes only. There have been many unintended consequences of this conflict. Joe Biden didn't stay in the race. This war hastened his departure. Kamala Harris revived the Democrats. For Netanyahu, she's a colored woman, and if their supremacist attitude then is towards her, which I'm sure it is like their disrespectful attitude to the former prosecutor of the ICC when they declared she's only a black African woman, then she's easily disposed of. He's not worried about her. He knows America better than America knows itself, or so he thinks. The world is paved with unintended consequences. The different diseases that stalk Gazans will eventually find their way into Israel, especially with an increasing population of conspiracy theorists. The lawlessness and civil discord that they intend to sow in what is left of Gaza and are trying to foment in Lebanon will be Israel's future unless the people awaken from its somnolence. And I pray for the unity of Lebanon. In trying to extinguish the lights of the Palestinians, Israel has shown the light on its true image, that of oppressors who have for decades brutally subjugated Palestinians. Netanyahu has unraveled the image of a civilized, most moral army, the only democracy in a Middle East surrounded by brutal dictators, an image carefully cultivated by much propaganda and smoke in the mirror, billowed by the bully pulpit of American administrations, both Democratic and Republican, and an irresponsible American media. He has unraveled his own carefully crafted and cultivated illusion, thus becoming, as is so often the case in supremacist ideology and practices, a cow that gives a pail of milk and turns around and kicks it over. Self-destruction. Supremacists giveth, and they taketh away. The chickens have come home to roost. No lie lasts forever. All that is hidden, although this was always in plain sight, must one day come to light. For many years it has spread the propaganda that Palestinians, Israel that is, has spread the propaganda that Palestinians teach their children to hate Israelis. While that might be true, because our oppressors are often viewed as boogeymen, Israelis have now shown themselves to be the ones who have wholesale taught their children not only to hate Palestinians, but to dehumanize them to such a degree that they can commit the savagery and unimaginable horror that they have committed 24/7 for more than 1 year on even babies and the majority of its population, seemingly accepting it as being okay. Throughout the years, Palestinian children were never viewed as children. They, like black children in America, were viewed and are viewed as criminals. And that gave the state of Israel and its judiciary the right to treat even the very young as such, subject to the draconian laws employed by the British during its mandate in Palestine, enforced 1923 to 1948. They're often held for years without charge, subject to physical, verbal, and sexual violence. This goes for both males and females. The Jews were viewed as pathogens, vermins, and rats by the Nazis, and that permitted the Nazis to commit the Holocaust without flinching one iota. The Hutus dehumanized the Tutsis in the 1994 Rwandan genocide to cockroaches, and that permitted them to massacre approximately 800,000 of their fellow human beings in a span of 100 days. Obviously, dehumanization does not occur overnight. It takes years of inculcation. Dehumanize to justify psychological inconsistency. What is the difference? Equal opportunity. We're all guilty at some point in history of it. Suffering does not ennoble. Cruelty and barbarism committed by anyone is still barbarism. No one has a copyright to suffering, nor the patent to wanton destruction, gratuitous violence, or brutality, be you an Israeli or a Palestinian. Mr. Netanyahu has done more harm to Israel than any of his enemies in their wildest dreams could have ever imagined. He has isolated Israel, making it akin to a rogue pariah state. I doubt Mr. Netanyahu cares what most of the world thinks. He has America towing the line with him. That is all that matters. But the road is paved with unintended consequences. Nothing lasts forever but salvation, the good kind. Most of the EU, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, in unleashing the vampire that is revenge in the person of Mr. Netanyahu, created a monster that they cannot control. As stated before, they cannot bring him to heel. America can, but is unfortunately the same. America, unfortunately, at this time, shares the same goals as Mr. Netanyahu. Well, we simple folks could have told the mob of sheep, that is the EU, most of the EU, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and of course the United Kingdom, we mustn't forget them, that it would come to this. This is what history teaches us. We knew it would come to this, but they, I am sure, are very surprised that they can no longer control the monster they created. The blind support of cruelty and genocide have revealed in full colors that these nations are no better than those they criticized and judged to be on the low ground of their moral high ground. Most of the global south, which is the majority of the world, already knew that, but the populations of these Western nations now realize what the majority of the world already knew. These politicians do not stand or agree with the majority of their populations. A new generation has come, and good independent media, not the ones given to conspiracy theory and propaganda, but the good ones do exist and have no obligation to toe the line according to their corporate sponsors. So information, good information, is out there. The youth is more conscious of their humanity. Although many of the older generation tell them that they do not understand the complexities of geopolitics and geopolitics. Yes, the young have much to learn, but there is hope for the future because they have empathy that the older generation, and thankfully only a minority of young people of warmongers, lack. Politicians are indeed out of step with the populace, the majority of the American population. Israel destroyed the goodwill and benefit of the doubt cultivated by much propaganda and the weaponization of the suffering of the Jews endured during the Holocaust. This is what Mr. Netanyahu did. There was goodwill, benefit of the doubt, because of the Holocaust and the suffering that Jews have endured and have endured for more than 2,000 years. The sad thing is that Mr. Netanyahu still believes in his own magic, or perhaps he does not care, as long as he has who he believes matters in the American power structure on his side. But for how long? Men come and men go. When will politicians ditch their old lovers for new ones with shinier objects? That day is coming. But he has destroyed the goodwill and the benefit of the doubt that Jews have enjoyed by people. I'm not talking about anti-Semites, by people, positive people around the world. Now they will conflate Zionists who have now created their own Holocaust in Gaza and probably the West Bank. Who knows, maybe in Lebanon. Many will not make the distinction. Mr. Netanyahu has now offered the younger generation a new Holocaust that they have witnessed firsthand in the glaring sun of broad daylight, and not one so far in memory. They only hear about one that was committed behind camp walls. No Holocaust should be forgotten. We need to know and remember each and every one of them so that we do not repeat them. We must forgive so that supremacists like Mr. Netanyahu do not weaponize them to commit other Holocausts. Some question whether the world has forgotten the victims of October 7th, 2023. None of us should forget October 7th, 2023. War should never be waged on innocents, especially on our children. But that question is one that should be posed to Mr. Netanyahu and his rogue army. The horrors they have committed have been to such a degree that not even the vampire whose bloodlust is a bottomless pit can indulge anymore. That vampire is oversatiated. That vampire is getting sick from all the blood that has been shed and that is available to it. To realize their genocidal dreams and make up for their security failures, if indeed it was a security failure, their slaughter spree and actions of their enablers have caused many to move on from October 7th, 2023. These events might very well herald a Saladin energy in the Middle East. The vision gave victory to the Crusaders in the First Crusade. Unity gave victory to Saladin. It is time for unity, not only in the Middle East, but all over the world. And let me just clarify here. The disunity amongst Muslims Sunni, Shia, small states, different small states created after the fall of the Seljuk dynasty or empire, helped to create disunity. And because of this disunity, the Crusaders were able to retake Jerusalem in the First Crusade. Saladin, a wise man, united the different groups, and that is what gave victory to him, and the Muslims were able to retake Jerusalem. As I said again, it is time for unity, not only in the Middle East, but all over the world. We need unity to combat the challenges facing mankind, not least a climate in dire crisis. I didn't say crisis. I said crisis. America has lost much in the respect it commanded out of fear. Much of that respect was out of fear. But even that doesn't matter now. Few fear America now. The fear of this hegemon is such, or let me rephrase that. I'm getting tired, but I'm almost finished. The lack of fear of this hegemon is such that another power, smaller power, was allowed to move into a base before America had even cleared out. This happened during the former administration, and it, in the past year, has repeated itself again. Sheer humiliation. There are many more unintended consequences to come, for the road is paved with them. I now close this chapter on this war as my guides have instructed, and as I said, that's a good sign in spite of the dark days that are yet to come, darker ones. Mahum maktub maktub. What is written is written. There are darker days ahead, but the sun will emerge from behind those dark clouds, perhaps sooner than we expect. So the records say. They don't always reveal everything, but so the records say. I will now close this chapter as instructed by my guides. History teaches that every one of us, for each of us, there's always amazing grace. None of us is without blemish. And as harsh as I have been in describing the horrors and atrocities meted out by Mr. Netanyahu and his righteous government, this extreme right-wing government and his army and the Biden administration, I wish for them that they find their conscience. I truly do. Sooner rather than later, and that they try as best as they can to correct some of the actions, incorrect actions that they have taken and caused so much suffering, and to realize their humanity and the humanity of others. Once again, history teaches that for each of us there is always amazing grace. None of us is without blemish. That includes me. Every one of us, all brothers in this brotherhood of man, no matter our spiritual mistakes and incorrect actions, can find amazing grace, as did the author of the song of the same name, John Newton, slave trader turned Anglican cleric and abolitionist, after his near-death experience in 1748 on the ship the Greyhound off the coast of Ireland. And let us not fall prey to hate. Hate, a contagion, a cancer metastasizing the cloud, an opportunistic bacteria, the cloud waiting to block the sun. Hate, waiting to hitch a ride on the train of love. Hate, the rat hitching a ride on the boat to the plague. Hate, the bedbug waiting for our suitcase. Hate, the roach riding on our coattails, the shadow always lurking behind, sometimes longer than us. Hate, just lurking behind the thin curtain, waiting for its turn on center stage to take us to a place not so far away, a blast back from civilization to barbarism, from knowledge back to ignorance, from wisdom back to foolery. Hate never takes a holiday, always looking for the opportunity to hitch a ride on the train of love. Hate inhabits the same house as love within us. May we never try to flee our conscience so that we will always do correct actions. May we learn to walk a mile in our brother's shoes so that we can see the humanity in each other. May we respect the differences in each other and know that our Creator has no chosen few. May we find comfort in the knowledge that each of us is slated for redemption and none is excluded. May we find solace in the knowledge that it is not a question of if, but one of when. Each of us shall return to our Father. May we know that we are just tenants on this earth and take care of each other, the earth and all the creatures that dwell thereon. May we always adhere to the divine principles of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, doing unto others as we would have them do unto us, love. May we know that which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am my brother's keeper. May the tiny shrouds of light forever illuminate our path through the dark. May peace forever reside within us and between us, one divine, universal love. And with this, I close and I turn the page. Remember, as dark as it might get in the next couple of weeks, better days are coming. The sun is going to emerge sooner than we think.